This conference will now be recorded.
So I thought I would maybe just start out with some quick introductions to get a sense of who's attending the workshop today. My name is Mark Northrup. I'm from the Northrop Range MPO, and I'm the lead on the MMOF program.
Jerome Rouser, I'm a transportation planner at the MPO.
Hannah Feldman, I am a transportation planner with the City of Greeley.
I'm Joshua Ma, grant administrator with the City of Fort Collins.
So I thought we'd go ahead and those folks online, if you'd like to introduce yourselves. I'll just start. First names, Becky.
Yes, Becky Carrasco, Transportation Planning Director with the MPO.
Jonathan.
Jonathan Stockbroker, I'm a transportation planner with the MPO.
Nicole.
Nicole Hanna, city engineer with the City of Loveland.
Greg.
Good morning, Greg Brink, Assistant Town Administrator in Eaton.
Victoria.
Good morning, I'm Victoria McKinnon. I'm the Planning Manager with Public Works at City of Greeley.
Wesley.
Wes Levanchi, Town of Eaton.
Dana.
Dana Horcole, City of Fort Collins.
Keith.
Keith Wakefield, Assistant City Engineer, City of Loveland.
Candace.
Candace Folkers, Transit Manager, City of Loveland.
Brandon. With Johnstown. Evan.
Hey, this is Evan Pinkham. I'm a transportation planner with Weld County.
Scott.
Yep, good morning. Scott Pearson, Transportation Engineer with Town of Windsor.
Paul.
Good morning, Paul Sizemore. I'm the Executive Director with the MPO.
Pepper.
Good morning, I'm Pepper McClenahan. I'm the Community Development Director for the Town of Milliken.
And I also see we have a caller 1. Can you identify yourself?
Yeah, this is Rusty McDaniel with Larimer County Engineering.
Great, thank you. So let's go ahead and get started. So thanks again for joining us today for this workshop. Hopefully this is useful for you as you fill out your applications for this current call. In terms of what we're going to cover today, it's I broke it up in essentially four focus areas. So the first part will just be an MMOF overview. So we'll be talking briefly about the Planning Council recap on October 3rd, briefly talk about the guidelines document, as well as looking at the schedule. Then I have another section dedicated to the application materials. So I'll be going through the project description, the application, and the equity analysis worksheet. And then I'll also be providing an example from a project that was done in 2022. And I also have a section dedicated to online resources. So I'll be just showing you the Call for Projects website, briefly going through the 2024 Call for Projects Hub, as well as the Call for Projects data tool map. And then finally, there'll be an opportunity for discussion and questions you might have. So the guidelines document was approved by the in terms of the Planning Council meeting, there was no discussion. And like I said, the guidelines document was approved and the process was approved. So in terms of the guideline document, as you know, it provides the list of MMOF goals, the funding estimates for this current call, the schedule, the various requirements, as well as the scoring process and criteria and the planning references. So just going through the document really quickly, As I mentioned, there's a section dedicated to the goals, which again is the focus point of the call and is a part of the application process. The funding, again, the total funding amount hasn't changed through this process. There was a slight change. Rhinoco requested a swap of funding years, so there was a change between 2027 and 2025. In terms of the schedule, again, it's mentioning the overall schedule. I'll talk about this in a minute in more detail. Again, as far as eligible applicants, this includes member governments and partner agencies. As it says in here, other entities such as human service providers, school districts, and other sponsors of eligible multimodal projects may apply via a local government member. And keep in mind, the funding for those projects would count against the maximum funding request for that local government member. Just a reminder again, eligible project types include operating capital costs for fixed route transit, operating capital costs for on-demand transit, transportation demand management programs, multimodal mobility projects enabled by new technology, multimodal transportation studies, modeling tools, greenhouse gas mitigation projects, and bicycle and pedestrian projects. Again, the project categories, there are two categories. Category A includes quantifiable GHG reducing projects, and category B is non-quantifiable or non-GHG reducing projects. Just a reminder again, the minimum request for infrastructure projects is $300,000. And for transit projects, it's $25,000. And as far as maximum requests, for category A projects, three-quarters of available funding can go towards that. In category B, no more than 1/4 of the available funding. So as you can see in the table, the total funding available for category A is about 3.4, category B about 1.1. So again, it comes to that 4.5 million. And then as far as per agency, category A is about 1.7 million and category B is about 567,000. So again, about 2.2 million total per agency. In terms of match requirements, again, it's dependent upon your community. So the majority of the communities have a 50% match rate, but the communities of Evans, Greeley, Loveland, and Larimer have 25%, and Garden City has 0%. And I'll talk about this with the schedule, but obviously the first step in this process is submitting a project description to staff. And further down the line, they'll be able to see that review. And again, with that process, there'll be different points of contact depending upon what specific subject you'll be covering or your project is related to. So like Bryce Reeves will cover infrastructure projects. John Wayne Quintonio will cover electrification and TDM projects. Kelly Smith on transit projects, and Michael Snow planning and programmatic projects. It's important to keep in mind as you're doing the application, the different requirements involved. In terms of MMOF, like I said, it kind of depends on the community, but the majority is 50%. The project must address at least one of the MMOF goals that I mentioned earlier, and the projects meet or exceed minimum MMOF request size for each application. I mentioned about the funding. In terms of the RTP, again, projects must be on the regionally significant corridor in the RTP. And projects impacting the regionally significant corridor or regional transit corridor must be consistent with the 2050 RTP corridor visions. And again, projects address at least one RTP goal and at least one performance measure. There are, again, requirements related to the active transportation plan. So active transportation projects must impact the regional active transportation corridor from the 2021 plan or provide a safe route to school. Projects impacting a regional active transportation corridor must be consistent with the corridor visions in the 2021 ATP. Other things to keep in mind is projects must comply with applicable local land use plans, local or regional transportation plans, and corridor studies. Projects need to be within the North Front Range MPO boundary. And ITS projects must conform to the Region 4 ITS architecture and supporting Region 4 ITS strategic implementation plan. There will be an equity analysis as part of this application process. So all project sponsors are required to complete with the worksheet. And the worksheet includes project information, short and long-term anticipated project burdens, anticipated project benefits, and as well as project outreach. So we have provided you with a map, just a general area map. And when we talk further in this workshop, I'll provide an example where you can find where you can actually look at your project and how it relates to the equity index. When it comes to time to submit your application, it must include a complete project application, project location map, as I said, an equity analysis worksheet, detailed cost estimate per unit by phase, and a letter of support from the mayor or town administrator. It's a very important component of this. And a resolution of support from the local government, council or board may be submitted in lieu of a letter of support if preferred by the project sponsor. So in addition to those requirements, application requirements, if you have an ITS project or a project impacting the state highway, you need to have a CDOT letter of support concurrence. If you're submitting more than one project, you need to submit a project prioritization by category. And then if you're submitting a transit-related project, you have to have a sustainable funding plan. And additionally, you have the option of other letters of support, if that's what you want to include as well. And I'm not going to get into details, but further down the line, CDOT also has certain requirements as far as reporting is concerned. And I'll show you this later on. This just gives you an example of what an overview of what the equity analysis worksheet looks like and the map. So in terms of the scoring process and criteria, so the membership is open to any member of the TAC, Northcote Bike and Ped Collaborative, Larimer County Mobility Committee, and our Weld County Mobility Committee. This is important to know, each agency applying for funding is required to have a representative on the scoring committee. And then submitted applications will be sent to committee members for review prior to the scoring meeting. So in terms of the committee, voting members include member local governments, and non-voting members of the scoring committee include staff, from managed MPO staff, representatives from agencies other than local governments, and any additional scoring committee members from a particular Northern Range member local government. So this table shows the scoring criteria by category. I'm not going to get into detail on that, but as you can see, heavy emphasis on strategic connections, multimodal improvements in network connectivity, as well as community benefits. And then we also provide, in the document here, we provide some planning references. So one being the CDOT local MMOF program guidelines, which is available on the website, which can provide you more information. The 2050 RTP corridors, there's a link to the chapter there that you can look into if you're wanting to know more information on that. And then here we have the different RTP goals. And then the document further goes into the different performance measures that are part of the RTP. The document also mentions the coordinating plan, so if that's something your projects can be focused on, that's something to look into as well. And then the EJ plan, which again integrates into the whole equity analysis that's involved in the process. So essentially, that's what the document the guidelines outlines. There's also links here. If you're on the document and you want to link to the different description, the application, as well as the worksheet, those are also available on the document. So in terms of the schedule, nothing really has changed here. Obviously, the call went out on Friday, the 4th. Today we're having the workshop. Descriptions are due this Friday. And then I did add in a date there just so you have an idea as far as internally how things are going to work. We're going to get the feedback to you by the 18th, preferably before that. But that would be the latest we get those back to you. The project applications are due to us by the 25th, so we can forward that to CDOT. There's going to be a GHG emissions reductions discussion the week of the 4th, November 4th. As things get closer, we'll set a date for that. And then CDOT will be providing feedback on those applications around November 8th. And then obviously important to know that the call for project closes. It'll be open for 6 weeks, closing on November 15th. Once the project closes, MPO staff will be sending out the scoring materials for those folks involved in that process on the 18th, so quick turnaround there. And as far as that process is concerned, if you're part of that committee, if you have any questions, those will need to be sent to us by the 22nd. And then the scoring worksheets, which will then tie into the scoring committee, will be due the week of December 2nd. Again, we'll finalize the date as that gets closer. And then we'll have the scoring committee the week of the 9th. And then moving forward after that, there'll be tech discussion of the recommended projects on the 18th. And then another important thing to know is the council will be discussing the recommended projects at the January 9th meeting. And that's when the actual applicants, you yourselves, will be presenting to the council. TAC will be making a recommendation on the awards January 15th. And then council then is scheduled to take action on February 6th. So before I move on to the materials, does anyone have any questions or comments about as far as kind of a general overview of the process? Okay, not hearing anyone, I'll move on to the next section of the workshop. Okay, so like I said, for this part of the workshop, I'm just going to go through the different forms and worksheets that are part of this application process. This project description, the application worksheet, and then I'll provide an example. And this one, like I said, is from 2022, which is the CDOT, Greeley CDOT merge project. So I'll start out by looking at the project description. General application information in the beginning of the description. Then you'll be putting in the project name, what jurisdictions are part of the project limits, as well as the length. And then you'll be noting what the project type is. So again, the category A or category B projects. And then you'll be putting essentially a description of the project scope. And it's important to know this is what work will be done, not to include why it will be done. You'll have an opportunity to do that with the application. And then the other part of the description where you'll be focusing on funding and phase by year. So you'll be, again, MMOF request, whatever funding you'll be putting in from 24 to 28 requested years. The matching funds, like who are those sponsors that if they're going to provide, if it's additional beyond, if it's you, and then you're going to put the other, whoever else is going to be providing source for match. And then also list the other, if there's other entities that are providing overmatch or you're going to be providing overmatch, you include that as well. And then there's a phase initiated section of the description. So you'll be selecting essentially what phases will be initiated during that fiscal year. You'll also be noting which your community, as far as what your match rate is. At this time, we haven't received anyone, or at least in initial discussion, no one seems to have wanting to do reduced match rate, but that's something we would include in this as well, if that were the case. And then you're also going to want to note the advertising date or notice to proceed, just the month and year, as well as the project completion date. And again, this project description will be due this Friday by 5 o'clock. Does anyone have any questions on the description? Okay, let's move on then. The project application is essentially just built off of the project description. So again, just you're putting in your application information, general information, contact information. Then you're going to put in the same information you put into the description. Again, noting what project type, category. Again, you'll be putting in a brief description of the project scope. Again, what work will be done, do not include why it will be done. With that being said, there will be a project justification section, which this is where you'll talk about addressing project impact and the scoring criteria related to strategic connections, multimodal improvements, network connectivity, community benefits, and or transportation equity. So that's where you can provide more of the why. The next section is dedicated to MMOF goals. So this is where you're going to select whether or not that project addresses those goals. Again, these are all, up to this point, these are all fill-ins. When you get to this section, you simply select yes or no for those. Then there's a section dedicated to how the plan relates to the different planning documents from the MPO. So again, which, if any, RTP or ATP corridors are impacted by the project. And if applicable, how does the project fit with the impacted corridor's vision as described in the RTP or ATP? You'll then be selecting which performance measures are impacted by the project. Highway safety, system performance, regional performance measures, and then the transit-related ones. And then talk about if there's any integration with other plans, so list any other planning documents, local, regional planning, or state documents that identify the project. And then if you have something ITS related, you're going to note in there if it's identified in the Region 4 ITS architecture plan, etc. The next section is dedicated to partnerships. So you'll note there if there's anyone that you're partnering with on the project. The next section is dedicated to environmental considerations. So you know which type of clearance, category exclusion, environmental assessment, or environmental impact statement is anticipated, and what is the status of the environmental clearance. And similar to the project description, you'll be putting in the different funding information, the source, the fate, what year the project will be worked on, and then selecting the phases related to that year. Then you'll be selecting again the match rate. And then there's a section dedicated to if any contingencies. So if you're, as far as partial awards, funding alternatives, and scalability. So for example, if a partial award is accepted, what is the minimum amount of MMOF funding the project would accept? And then if the project receives a partial award, unsecured funding is unsuccessful, and or if a match relief request is denied, identify how the project could proceed. For example, extent of scope reduction, sources of alternative funding, timeline adjustments, etc. And then also you need to check whether or not it's a fiscal year 2024 project that's essentially getting the funding sooner, noting that you can meet the deadlines there. Otherwise, you check it can only accept the other year funds for 25, 26, 27, or 28. And again, this is obviously just state funds. And then as far as operations and maintenance, noting if the completed project will generate the need for operational and or maintenance funds, and identify the estimated annual cost and status and source of funding. And then similar to the project description, you're going to note the advertisement date or notice to proceed, as well as the project description or project completion date. And then just on the bottom here, it's just the way you're checking off to make sure that you've included all the required attachments. So again, project location map, equity worksheet, detailed cost estimate, and letter of support from their town administrator. And then depending on your project, you may need to include the CDOT letter of support or evidence of CDOT consultation as related to things like the ITS state highway projects. If you submitted more than one project, the project prioritization. In the instance, if you're seeking match relief, you'd also select that. there needs to be GHG emissions analysis, and then again, transit project, the sustainable funding plan. And in the instance where you wanted to include additional letters of support, you can check that as well. And again, the applications are due to us at this planning at Northern Ridge MPO address by 5 o'clock on November 15th. So does anyone have any questions about the application? There's a lot of things to go through there, so. All right, well, I'll move on then to the equity sheet, equity analysis sheet. So again, general project information, just the sponsor, name of the project. For this particular worksheet, you'll want to identify if it's within a quarter of a mile of the equity index area. So you'll select yes or no on that one. And then you'll be, essentially it's broken down into two sections, the project burdens and the project benefits. So you'll note both short-term and long-term. If there's going to be various related burdens here, again, you just select yes or no for those. And then again, benefits. So again, you select yes or no if that relates to your project. In addition to the yes or no's with those, you'll also want to include you want to provide more background as far as any additional burdens and benefits. So again, you would include that in the different sections, applicable sections. And then you also want to note what sort of outreach, public involvement there's been with the project, or will be with the project, as it relates to environmental justice areas, disproportionately impacted communities, and such. So pretty straightforward, but with that, does anyone have any questions on the worksheet? Okay. So now I'm just going to quickly go through an example from, like I said, from the called in 2022. This was by the City of Greeley with support from CDOT. This was for the merged US 34 Regional Mobility Hub. Again, it specs Greeley, and they show the project limits. Not applicable as far as mileage. They do select, in this instance, there are some folks who have selected multiple project types, given the scope of the project. So this one obviously has multiple selections for category A. So this includes a capital cost for fixed route transit, multimodal mobility project, with new technology, bicycle and ped project, so on. And then here they give an example, they give a description of the project and what they're doing. It included obviously more than one funding source. They noted it here. So Greeley, in addition to CDOT, is providing funding, matching funds, and then there's also overmatch provided by CDOT as well. And I will note too, when you're filling out these forms, the math will be updated for you automatically, so you don't have to make any changes or anything. They noted again what phases will be initiated. Obviously it applies to them, so they check themselves here. And then they added the month and year for the advertisement date, as well as the project completion. Like I said before, the application is essentially built off of the project description. So there's not much new as far as introductory sections, essentially the same information. There is this part about if it's part of an ongoing project, that's where you described if it was. And again, they had the project scope, which is more of a brief description of what they're doing, but then they also provided justification as far as why it's being done. And the text does adjust depending on how much text you put in there, which explains why some of the text varies, the size varies somewhat. But there's not really a shortage as far as what you can put in there. Or, I mean, you can put in quite a bit in here, I guess is the point, as far as this, like these sort of sections here with the text options. Again, the goals, check with the goals here. This particular project touched on all of the MMOF goals. For the RTP, again, as far as NPO planning documents, they mentioned US 34, 35th Avenue, and that the project meets all the goals from 2050 RTP vision. They selected a number of performance measures that the project was addressing. And then they did mention, as far as other planning documents, City of Greeley's Transportation Master Plan, and these other plans here that it's where the project is identified. Obviously not an ITF's project, so they didn't have to provide information on that. As I mentioned earlier, CDOT was supporting this project and providing funds towards that. And they identified as far as the category exclusion. Again, similar funding as I showed before from the description, with them identifying as their match rate. And then they just put a brief description here as far as partial award in terms of contingencies. Let's see if I can. And they explained as far as as far as partial awards, how they would address that, how they would proceed. And again, this was involving 25 funds, so they checked that box. As far as operation and maintenance, so since it's new construction, no significant maintenance is not anticipated until after at least 10 years post-construction. And Greeley is operating and maintaining the mobility hub in this example. And then again, advertisement date, completion date, and then they checked off all the boxes for everything they provided. And they also included a CDOT letter of support as well, and additional letter of support. In terms of the worksheet, again, very straightforward initially, just sponsor Greeley, the name of the project. The project is within the quarter mile of the equity index area, so check yes for that. As far as anticipated project burdens, the only thing they said yes on was noise and vibration, but they did explain here in anticipated burdens section here that that the construction of the hub will have short-term noise and vibration burdens due to normal construction activities. So, but they'll not occur post-construction. So that explains why they checked that as yes. And that will be provide the anticipated benefits that we have here. And then they again provided pre-description as far as providing more detail as far as the benefits of the project. And then as you can see, they had a pretty thorough public engagement process for this project. So. Does anyone have any questions at this point as far as what we've gone through before we move on? Okay. So now I'm just going to move on to the online resources that are available for you as you go through your application. There's a on our website, we have a call for projects page that includes just a general overview of how our processes work. And there's a specific section dedicated to this current call, which includes a link to the guidelines as well as all the other documents that relate to it as well. We also have a hub, essentially a call for projects hub that we update for each call. And so this reflects the current call for this process. Again, if you're needing to refer to it, there's a schedule there. And then there's links to all the different forms that you would need as you go through the process. As I mentioned in the beginning of this workshop, this is being recorded. And so the recording will be placed on the site if you want to view it in the future or forward it to others. And then in a minute, I'll get into the more of the data side of things, the resources that you can use as you work your way through the application. see how this works. I was having some issues earlier with this. It took a while for the page to load. Let's see what happens here. So this had been something, this was a tool that had been used previously in Call4 projects, but it's a great way of, if you're someone who's not essentially well-versed or trained in GIS, this is a great way of being able to essentially, oh, here we go. This is a great way of being able to view your project and how it relates to the different criteria we talked about as far as its relation to the equity areas and such. So anyway, when you bring up this page, essentially it's just providing sort of an overview of the application and how you can use it for justification of your project. There's that project justification section of the application. And again, if you have any issues with this, feel free to reach out to me. And we're using, for the call, we're using this planning at North Orange MPO address. Just in the event, for some reason, I can't respond, there'll be some staff member who will respond to you as quickly as possible. So once you go into the application, again, this just provides kind of just general instructions of how the tool works. Very intuitive, but as you can see, there's a number of layers here that are available to view. So, you can get daily traffic, in theory, if it decides to draw. So you can get daily traffic information. We uploaded the latest crash data for 19 to 23, which is great. Want to give a shout out to Michaela, our new planner one, who helped to put that together for us. So there's crash type, severity, and then we also provide the different corridors. So again, regionally significant corridors, active transportation corridors, as well as the transit corridors, activity centers, the equity index, which again has been helpful as you look at your project as it relates to that worksheet that you're going to be working on. The different freight corridors in Colorado, as you can see, there's a lot of different data available here. Congestion mitigation program, congested corridors, national highway system, priority corridors, and then of course the MDL boundary, which is an important part to keep in mind as you're working through this. So, like I said, this is a great tool if you're not necessarily an ArcGIS person. But what's great about here is if you at least have access to data, you can literally add data. You simply just download it. You can download a shapefile to the site, and then you'll be able to view it relative to these different layers that we have here. So again, it's a great tool for that. And then I thought I'd just do a quick example of, just turn off some of these. So as you can see here, there's this option where you can click on this button here using this tool, and essentially you can select, you can actually draw like where the project is. So let's say it's here, for example. So this intersection here, it'll show you, there we go. It's a little slow right now, but it'll show you the data related to that location. So just for example, this project essentially is related or intersects with 3 regional significant corridors. You can also get like the traffic information, daily traffic information. Obviously, this one particular area would fall within an equity area in the index. I wish it were a little faster today, but it decided to be slow for Monday, I guess. So again, it's related to one of those. So it's a great option. Like I said, if you're not necessarily comfortable using a GIS program, it's a great way of seeing how your project relates. The other tool I wanted to show you Bear with me for a second. Which essentially relates to it, but it's independent on its own as well. Is if you're not aware, we have a open data portal. So if there's specific data that you're looking for example, so if you're like looking at what regional significant corridors, for example, you can literally come in here and you can see 2050 regional significant corridors and click on that. Maybe. I'll give it another minute, and if it doesn't show up, I'll just describe it instead of showing it on the screen. Oh, there we go. Communication. Anyway, the point is you can go through here and then literally download. You can also share it as well, but you can download the data if you wanted to here. Here's the button right here. So if you prefer to work in your own GIS world or what have you, you can download the different data that we have here. And like I said, the data tool is a good starting point. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. This is a good starting point, but it depends, I guess, on what you're most comfortable with and like what environment you like to work in. So there are a couple of options there for you for that. So that concludes sort of the overview presentation that I have. At this point, I'll open the floor if anyone has any questions or if anything they'd like to talk about. So yeah, let me know if there's anything you have questions on or would like to talk about with the group.
For the Category B projects, it's only capital costs specifically for on-demand transit and not fixed route transit.
Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
For the Category B projects, it's just the capital costs. It's only for capital costs specifically for on-demand transit, not fixed route transit.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the Category A includes capital costs for fixed route transit. So,
okay.
Yeah. And the operating costs would be Category B. So, Thank you for the question.
Sure. I missed that detail.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, well, I appreciate you taking your time to listen into the workshop today. Hopefully it was useful, at least maybe the data tool or just some reminders were helpful to you. And again, if you have any questions, what have you, feel free to reach out to me. And like I said, that planning at North Orange NPO address was the preferred way of communicating, just to make sure that, you know, if for some reason I'm out of the office, someone else could respond and get back to you. So. Dana, did you have a question? Or?
No,
Nope.
no, just coming on camera. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll be in touch soon. Take care,
Thank you
everyone.
much.